Okay, there's not actually that much longer about this bottom shelf which I want to point out. Tess d'Urberville's, that's definitely worth pointing out. What else? Steinbeck, Grapes of Wrath, really awesome novel. And here's the First Circle. Solzhenitsyn, I definitely recommend that. That is such a great book, and the thing that's amazing is that, I don't know how many, it's like 500 pages long. It's about 570 pages long, and yet some of the prose in it is almost poetic. It's really amazing. Okay, then up here, politics, inequality, debt, inequality of healthcare, Global Health Watch, Comparative Politics, Pilger, Adam Smith, Economic History of the United Kingdom, Mill and Liberty, 1980s Economics in the UK, Keynes, Malcolm X's autobiography, Out of the Past. It's a book about people who about the history of homosexuality. Categorically Unequal. That was definitely this is definitely one of the best books of last year. As my books all fall to the ground. What else? Sort of recently, what I've been reading recently has mainly been about renewable energy and variability and wind power and how much of the UK's electricity we can provide from renewables. This book would have to be the Variability Bible. That's definitely if you want like a introduction which is technical enough so it actually answers the questions, but not overly technical because you're not an engineer, then I guess this would have to be the book for you. It is still quite high in jargon, but the whole electricity sector is full of jargon, so you've just got to basically just get over it in time. You just read on and curse them for having like 3 different words for the same meaning. Most what I've been reading recently is really reports rather than books. Then social psychology, sociology. Been doing a bit of that kind of reading. Science, development, poverty, Chomsky, Klein. I guess business, ideas and innovation. Wow, in fact, credit derivatives. I bought some books on credit derivatives to sell. This is kind of an introduction, so an introduction to the mess we got in. I got some amazingly funny books, some of them all written around the time that the sort of credit crisis was unfolding, or at its zenith, I guess you'd say. Then I've got sort of State of the World and 3 books on China, on like air pollution in China, basically. Trying to get my head around that. So Power of Persuasion, Words at Work. Second copy of Aristotle. That's I've got one of my friend's copies. Comedy, quite a lot of stuff on comedy. I was quite interested in comedy and persuasion. Like, can comedy, is it a progressive force? That kind of thing. Attitudes. Laughing in the Dark, more comedy. The Bleak Book, which I haven't read, about Rwandan genocide. Noam Chomsky, social psychology, international justice. This was a really enjoyable book, I'd say. Caliban and the Witch, and it kind of ties together. This sounds crazy, right? But it ties together how the development of capitalism, the end of feudalism, and all the changes that went on there, how that links into witchcraft, and it kind of it takes apart some of the arguments about the Enlightenment and sort of the great thinkers and like the development of science, and the fact that was really what dispelled witchcraft, because we stopped being like mad people and stopped being mystics and like stopped being scared of the occult. and just started being more skeptical. This kind of takes that apart, and it's really fascinating. It sounds a bit mad, but I mean, I thought it was a really interesting book, and I guess I found the arguments quite convincing, so I'd recommend that. Book on fear. If you're going to read, like, we live in an age of fear and anxiety, I think, in terms of a sort of political discourse and just the mood of the society ever since September 11th, 2001, 10 years on. I think this book is kind of a good examination of that topic. So anarchism and other essays. Language and Power, really interesting book, I guess, about how sort of particular word choices, certain framing and so on, actually advances certain agendas of certain people, perhaps while appearing neutral. It really only works when it appears neutral, so that's good. It's all about looking critically at the media. Okay. Don't really have anything else to say about that. Then these are kind of older books, and it's all quite dark down here, so I apologise about that. So then there's some chemistry, Monty Python, history of Britain. I was never really into my history, but I've picked up a few history books along the way. Now I guess I could say, occasionally I've looked at things like up here, Britain's that's Myth of Britain's Economic Miracles. There's a couple of sort of history books about Britain's economy which I've been looking at because of what that tells us about today, I guess. So once you have a modern day interest, I guess that's when the history gets interesting, to look how certain issues have changed through time. So I've got, this is kind of local environment here about the Cairngorm National Park, Edinburgh and the Lothians, which is somewhat south, Scottish environment. Another one about the Cairngorms, and I've got David Attenborough. Got a lot of these who produced Time Life books, I think. Central American Jungles, kind of about the environment. Then there's Andes to Amazon. So quite a lot of David Attenborough. This is mainly wildlife stuff, and then like biology, it's university, botany, microbiology, biochemistry, all university stuff. Biochemistry and biology is kind of what I did. I guess I've got an anatomy book along the end, which is not something I studied, but something that's quite interesting to look at. Soils, inorganic chemistry. This is all stuff which is sort of past reading rather than the sort of thing that I'm reading at the moment. Okay, so that's probably 2 videos, and that's the end of my guided tour of books.